School's in. Pay attention. More of the tailgate files. Wix filters. Let you know it's made in Taiwan. One of the reasons I still smoke. I just called Wix filters, okay? And this is what's wrong with the industry as a whole. Even like Derek from Vice Grip Garage, I love the guy to death. But even he should be saying something about this. If you live in the Northeast and you get a box this size for your transmission filter and gasket, it's one of the things I love about Felpro. The gasket is neatly wrapped. You can cut it out of the package, nice and neat, and it comes right out in one piece, uncrumpled, unlike this piece of shit, Wix filters, okay? I'm a technical engineer. Technically is one of my what do you want to call it, like a slang title. Now tell me what's wrong with this picture. I'm going to talk close to the camera. We're getting a lot of wind noise. This is the filter they give you, and I got to watch with my greasy paws touching my camera. You see how this one has a round neck? And by the way, you see this, how this gasket, or how this pan is wet all the way around. It's stained. Even it's got some goo where they tried to, I don't know, it looks like high tack. Looks like they tried to put high tack to that old rubber gasket, because I'm not fond of rubber gaskets. I had to lay this rubber gasket in my truck because it was a crumpled up piece of shit in the box. So if you guys get your ass hairs up, there's nobody to call. I just called a friend of mine that does have a transmission shop, and unfortunately he didn't answer the phone, and I want to get this truck to the show on Sunday. Not to mention I want to get that side of that bed resprayed. That's why my fuel doors are still off there. A bug decided to jump in my clear coat cup and commit hara-kiri. So more of the tailgate files. You know, if there was a redesign on that part, which manufacturers often do, I'm going to struggle to put you on this. This tripod, it was a cheap piece of junk. It was $54, I think I paid for the damn thing at Walmart or something. I don't think I got it on the inner screen. But anyway, through the wind noise here, I know the wind's whipping through. We got a hurricane coming up the coast again. Let's hope like hell it goes right on by. Or if not, it lands on Joe Biden's house and Hunter Biden's house. Because allegedly Joe and Hunter, let's not get into that. But anyway, if there was a redesign on that part, at least put something in the goddamn box. And then the ignorant bitch at Wix Filter says to me, well, you can go get a factory filter, you know, it's an aftermarket replacement part. That's part of what's wrong with the industry. And then she's talking that the patent was copied. But if it was redesigned, put something in the box. Don't tell me then and be, you know, she was ignorant and go get a factory Ford filter. As far as I was told by 2 different dealerships, it's no longer available. Do they list it? Yeah. Do they list inventory? They said one place might have it. Well, that doesn't help me that my filter's a month and a half out when I decided to rely on a brand name that, you know, other people were recommending. My experience with those generic filters companies, they've been total catastrophes. And they go out of business. They have hundreds of dollars of inventory in your shop. And this is what happened to a buddy of mine down in Allentown. He has an actual service station where they still service cars. He had inventory. I guess it indicated that he owed money even though it was paid. And these people sent the sheriffs and a fucking goon squad to confiscate his inventory. And they took other items that weren't even Wix filters, but they were on the list. They were similar items, so they took them. I don't know. I don't think it was Wix filters. Was it? There was one that just went out of business. They was like Wix. They were white filters too. They were just like Wix. I can't think of the name of them. It's another. They were related to Purelator, actually, the company that went out of business. So it wasn't Fram. It wasn't any of the major brands. And God, it was on the tip of my tongue. It's another company. But they sent a goon squad in to confiscate the man's inventory. I'm like, holy shit. If I get a hold of that nugget with that dump truck that beeps going by Paul's house every 5 minutes, oh my God, people can be like little freaking children. I swear to God, nobody pulls their pants up anymore and wears their hat straight. So that is my story about Wix filters. Wix, you want to send me a crumbled up piece of garbage in a box like that I got to sit it in the sun? This is the Northeast, and if I had a transmission issue where I had to drop the pan or something, do an inspection, maybe get the pan back up, drive it to a shop in 0 degrees, or say, even, like I said, if it would be 50, 40 degrees out today, I'd be SOL for getting that on there. I'd have to lay it in the heat, maybe by my wood stove or whatever. The days here, they can get up to 40, 50 degrees. At night, it can get down to 30 into the 20s. But this whole automotive thing is so out of control, and there's nobody to call. You get some woman on the phone. You don't get anybody that's an actual engineer for the company, does a cross-reference index. They just have somebody that can read the stuff, not somebody that's familiar with the stuff. And that is what is wrong with the industry. Not to mention, here comes the wind again, but we have thousands and thousands of brands of cars. But this is ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. It is. And I know there's other brands, but that's, like I said, when I buy transmission filters, okay, I bought a Victor kit for the last C6 that I did, and I'm going to tell you something, that may very well date back to the early 90s, maybe the late 80s. And anyway, the transmission pan gasket was a Victor gasket. You had to buy their product separate from the filter. And at one time, you could just buy the transmission filter and buy a Victor gasket. And it was the only thing that I liked about Victor gaskets was their transmission pan gaskets. They were a different type of, like a real soft rubber. This one's almost like that, so I'm really not afraid to use it. Because what happened, why that transmission pan gasket leaked, the gasket expands after you bolt it down, the original one. That's how you got that leak. And the fluid saturates it, and it just starts leaking all around the pan. And you could tighten the bolts, it ain't going to help you. Now, that type of rubber is like a real true, I would say like a polyester rubber. So it's not going to saturate, and it's completely saturate, and it's not going to leak. But that's basically what those older gaskets, why the transmission pans all leak on these older Ford transmissions. The gasket is more like a sponge than a gasket, so it starts soaking up the fluid, and it just starts ejecting the fluid once there's pressure inside the transmission. And that's why a lot of people, they don't think that transmission leak is all that bad, because you see the fluid just a little bit on the ground, so you're not that concerned. It's just a little leak. But when you're driving, it's a lot larger leak when there's pressure inside the transmission. And I had affirmation of that, is how I knew most of my leak is coming from that pan gasket, if not all of it, is because it's all over the exhaust. I was smelling it when I parked the truck. So I understood what part of the problem was. It had one of those old school gaskets on it. And those kits were still available. I mean, the C6 is a pretty hardy transmission. You rebuild the C6 like this one's partially rebuilt, somebody was up in that throttle body. That whole thing's brand new. The whole throttle body is brand new, and you can see it. And it's all factory Ford parts, and it has the Reman tag inside the transmission. So I know that was actually a Ford Reman transmission, and it wasn't even like the axles. I said the axles on this truck, they're OEM Ford axles. They're not aftermarket. They're not rebuilt. These were brand new axles. My other evidence is that rust. That greenish tint and brown tint is rust. This truck may have very well been in a flood, and maybe that's how the tree fell on it back in the 90s. I have to look what hurricanes came about in 94 or 95, and I'm going to do a little further research, because I'm going to assume the condition that this truck was in, it was in fairly decent condition, and it was in a flood. And more than likely it was a hurricane and a tree fell on it. I doubt tornadoes do those sort of things, create that sort of flood. And I doubt it was Sandy, because Sandy was too recent. So it had to have been something back in the 90s that this thing spent 20 years in prison in a garage. So there were no hurricanes here locally, but it's not to say this thing wasn't sold at some auction and it was still running. Okay, it may have even, that transmission may have even been put in it back then, because there was literally nothing in the bottom of the pan. There was a little bit of clutch dirt, but I mean nothing like you would expect from, say, a 30, 40-year-old original transmission. So there's a lot of suspect things that are pointing fingers a lot of different directions. And when you buy a 40-year-old vehicle, pretty much expect that. This guy worked on it, that guy owned it. You might find out, I might find out this thing had a half dozen different owners. So it might behoove me to do that, what do they call that? I'm blanking for names. That VIN search thing. There's one that you go on. I think Wiki. I think they have Wiki VIN now too. You can go on WikiLeaks or whatever. They have a VIN thing. Take it from me. This is not the way to fly, and especially when you want to get a job done, because I'm afraid to put that in my transmission. I'm actually afraid to put that filter in there, and I'm going to find out I lunched my transmission, because then I am going to get a lawyer as much money as I have in this truck. So that is my video, and Wix filters, you suck. I'm not going to use your shit. Somebody else can.